All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6:04. First item on the agenda would be roll call.
Todd McCulloch,
Here.
David Kennedy,
Here.
Trisha Brown, Kristen Runge,
Here.
Al Dassow, Jeff Tews,
Here.
Abigail Zellner.
All right. Second item on the agenda is minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes from February 21st?
No.
All right. Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes. Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Excellent. Item number 3, public comment. Do we have anyone in the audience? We have no one in the audience. Do we have anyone online that would like to make a public comment? There's someone online?
We do see that there is a Jerry online as an attendee. If you would like to speak now, please use the raise hand feature.
Here comes.
Maybe. All right. All right, and no comment from Jerry? No, all right. The next item on the agenda is business item. First thing today, we're going to discuss the learning goals of the community members in the 2024 CDA plans. Lauren, I'll pass it over to you, or do you want me to start?
She's here.
Pardon?
No.
Yes, and Abigail Zellner just came in.
So if you want to go ahead and take this one,
All right.
probably more versed in it than I am.
I thank you very much. I will. So when we were talking about what we wanted to do, we've had kind of several major accomplishments, but the Housing Betterment Fund is one of our more significant efforts. It is launching. Applications are out right now, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on today. But it seems that having gotten that goal well underway, now might be an optimal time to talk about what we as a committee want to do in the upcoming year, or what some projects are that we might want to take on as a committee over the next year. So I would like to have a little bit of an open discussion about what your goals are as individual CDA members, what you see as needs for the community, and within the scope of what we are able to do as a committee, what should we be looking at from your perspective? I'm totally surprising you guys with this, probably, unless you read that into the one agenda item. So,
Kristen, this is Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
I feel like we've made great progress, and we've got funding, and things are going well. But I don't feel like we've got a good prioritized order on how we're going to approach this, and where's the money going to go? Where are we going to have the best impact? I just feel like we talked about it, but I think we need to get a focus on, here's the 3 items that we're going to take on and distribute the cash that we're getting.
Okay, for the Housing Betterment Fund or for the TIF funds in general?
For the fund. I guess it could go to the whole TIF fund.
Okay. All right. So discussion on how to prioritize the TIF dollars that we'll be collecting that are not already allocated to the Housing Betterment Fund. Would that be an accurate description of something that we should be discussing this year?
Yes, that's
Okay.
That's what I think, yes.
Excellent.
I guess related to that really quickly, we will need to also discuss budgeting for the Housing Betterment Fund dollars, because it does say in the program that CDA will budget per cycle, and that hasn't necessarily been done. Granted, we don't have a firm dollar amount yet. The last number I got from Renee was about $164,000 is in the fund, but that's not including the most recent TIF closure, the closure of TID 3, I think it is. So I would need to get updated numbers for her on that, but that could also be included in that conversation.
Okay. When we're talking about Housing Betterment Fund budgeting, how much we want to spend now versus how much we want to spend in the subsequent periods?
Yes.
It would help me to know what the status is of some of our earlier discussions, maybe August last year. We were talking about the old Hofbräu House and some of those projects. And I didn't know whether that would be a budgetary item or if that, we were looking at developers or where the status of those were. Cause to me, that might be something we might want to budget.
Okay. So update on some of the discussions we had in August around direction and development. Excellent. All right.
I would say, I know, Kristen, you've talked about kind of diversifying Waunakee's tax base by doing some more with business development potentially. So I know this committee historically has been pretty focused on residential, but maybe there's some other avenues we can explore this year.
Business and economic development.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know that we have done a business retention and expansion, a BRE walk or study lately. And I see you shaking your head, Lauren. Have you found anything in the
Not that I'm
files?
aware of, not that I found in the files.
All right. Other ideas? David, here's a question for you. At one point, did the village, as a former business owner, at one point, did the village routinely do business retention and expansion discussions or walk? We used to do walks in some of the communities I work with where you just go from business to business and meet with them. Would that be new?
I'd say that would be new. I don't
Okay.
recall, well, of course I go back to 1975, so. Obviously, there was nothing involved with the village in me starting the business or anything other than, making sure I didn't need any kind of permits or that type of thing, but.
That's not happened for us in our assisted living business.
Okay. The village has never come over to talk about what you need in terms of support or, okay.
No.
Would you agree with putting it on the list? Maybe something that would be good for us to do?
Hmm.
I'm putting you on the spot, so.
Well, I guess we've been so focused on housing and providing opportunity for people that can't afford housing, affordable housing. Jumping to supporting the business is important. I just don't know whether I think it goes back to my original statement of saying, I think we need to decide what we're about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have been issued a charge by the village board, and I think we focused on portions of that charge. We are a newer committee in that sense, and our focus definitely has been housing. When we're talking about housing, are there things within our purview that we should be pursuing? Al, who is not here tonight, has asked to meet about land trusts and looking at what, do we have the need for a land trust? What would a land trust involve? What could we be doing to maybe look at that as an avenue for more affordable home ownership? What ideas do you guys have? Are you interested in pursuing more in terms of housing? Are you interested in other avenues that support affordability in the community?
That's what I felt has been our mission, or at least what portion I see from it. That's been our main focus.
And that certainly has. Yeah. And we were transformed from the Economic Development Committee to the Community Development Authority in response to the Housing Task Force. So I think that will always remain a big part of our mission.
Is that something we should maybe research to see if there's other communities, if there's any great ideas out there for, something that I think about, but when I look at my grandparents' houses and houses that were near factories and stuff, they were small and there was lots of them. And I don't know if developers would ever be interested in creating something like that, but if we could partner with a developer that'd be interested in creating, smaller houses that people would be respectful of having and, create neighborhoods where they would want to better their houses and keep them up and stuff like that. I would think that would be an interesting concept, but I don't know if there's other better ideas now of things that are out there in other communities that I'm just not aware of.
think there've been some, things are coming across my desk, that have been different than what we saw before the pandemic. Sheboygan County Economic Development Corporation has launched a project in partnership, with their major employees, so employers, Volrath, Kohler, some of the other big employers in the area, where they're purchasing land and then building homes that are smaller in square footage and entry level. So not a lot of bells and whistles, but a good solid home above 1,400 square feet. The entry level price is 265,000. They don't go really much above that. You can qualify to buy one if you work in the county itself. And there is a fund set aside for a really substantial down payment up to $65,000, depending on the household composition. Obviously, I'm not in charge of it. I'm just reading about it. But we could bring in we did this before the pandemic, and then I feel like the whole housing market really changed during that time. But we did have a series of speakers that came to talk about innovations in housing and providing housing. We could start that series up again. Would that be useful?
I'd be interested in that just because it seems, I guess I would prefer that to continuing to build apartment complex after apartment complex after apartment complexes, to see neighborhoods where people could have some land and have a house and be able to start their lives that way.
Yeah.
So I guess a couple thoughts related to that. First, the most recent housing study, housing needs analysis, is about 5 years old, and pre-pandemic. So is there a benefit to revisiting that and seeing if there are any changes within those 5 years? Especially with the changes in the housing market, is there a benefit to looking into what the status is? Where are we on some of these goals, or what's changed?
Yeah.
I think that would be like, I don't think we can do anything with
Yeah.
unless we have that, actually. I think it's just changed so much that I don't even know how relevant this stuff from before the pandemic even is anymore.
Okay. And then also Todd and I met today with the Dane County Division of Housing Access and Affordability, which is in the Department of Health and Human Services. And the discussion was wide ranging, but they do have quite a few programs regarding housing access and affordability, given their name. And one of the ways that our conversation is going to bring this up later, one of the directions our conversation took was how some of their home ownership and betterment programs can either stack or dovetail with our housing betterment fund, but they do also have some other programs related to affordable housing, just general housing affordability. And so I was wondering if it would be worth it to have them come and give a presentation that we would kind of narrow down a little bit, because they do have quite a few programs. But if that's something that you would like us to get set up to have them come at a future meeting.
Absolutely. I think that sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. One of the things, as long as we're kind of on updating the housing study that we did with the task force, we should probably take a look at the task force goals and update on those. I think it's probably been a good 18 months, maybe 2 years since we took a really strong look at that list.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe even if we could do that in April. Jeff, you'll still be with us in April, right? On the committee?
I don't know. I thought I was out in April.
Okay. Could we have you would you be willing to come as a guest or zoom in on a guest, since that's sort of the
Absolutely.
bookend? You were such a big part of that effort to begin
Sure.
with. Yeah, excellent.
Sure.
Excellent. What other housing work do we have? We had always said we were going to look at home ownership options. I feel that really did get derailed by the pandemic. So with the Housing Betterment Fund, we're making a step in that direction. Do we want to bring back some of the other speakers that we had pre-pandemic? We had one, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the company. I don't truthfully know if they're even around anymore, but they were doing townhouses where you would rent and then a portion of your rent would go towards equity when you were ready to buy. Yeah, rent to own. We want to see if some of those are still available. Yeah.
Jeff's term goes to May 1st. I did.
Goes till May 1st? You're stuck with us through April, Jeff. So you go till May 1st.
Okay,
I just looked at my, because I didn't know how long my term was, and it's like, oh, 4 years, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, other ideas of things that we should be discussing. So a discussion, and this is probably something we should put at the kind of in the near term rather than kick it out, a discussion on allocating the money. We've got budgeting for the Housing Betterment Fund. Both of those seem like not urgent, but soonish discussions. Status of the earlier discussions around some of the projects in the community, updating the housing study, Dane County Division of Housing Access and Affordability programs, and possibly how we can better publicize those within the community too. I feel like oftentimes the county does a good job of broadcasting their information countywide, but if you're in any particular community, it might be difficult to know what's out there and overwhelming in terms of searching. And then in terms of our other duties, maybe starting to think about business retention and expansion walks or study to see if there are needs out there that we have. We did, some of us on the board were invited to go to a childcare forum with our childcare roundtable with Diane Hesselpine and Alex Jors a couple of weeks ago. It was excellent, but we did learn a lot about the childcare needs in the community. Do we have any desire as a CDA to hear about those? I don't know that we can directly affect those, but those are certainly issues that are related to affordability and housing, particularly for our younger families.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest.
I'm happy to speak to that as a
Yeah?
representative of that cohort. Yes, please, we would love help.
Excellent.
Kids are expensive, as
They
everyone
are.
knows.
They are. And childcare is crazy.
Yeah, especially when your parents won't retire to just take care of your kids. Why?
What are they thinking? What are they thinking?
I know, isn't that the life goal to become a grandparent? But I'm just teasing, of course. But
Yeah. I think that's why you spend a lot of time in the Carolinas. Mhm. So, so maybe add that to our list, just getting some information around childcare and its impact on affordability.
You know, the difficulty of dealing with the business.
Mhm.
I can't tell you in the 28 years at Kennedy Hahn, where my main focus was looking for help.
Yeah.
You know, you're usually so busy just functioning every
Mhm.
day, especially in those first, 10 years or so.
Mhm.
I would struggle to find people who would tell you what kind of help they could use because,
Mhm.
you're surviving month to month, checkbook to checkbook kind of thing. It's, like I say, you're just really not thinking about some kind of help
Yeah.
coming from the community.
Mhm.
It's mostly, stay out of the way and let me get my work
Sure
done
thing.
kind of thing. So that's,
I would agree with that statement. I think about our employees and the stress that they're under around childcare now and trying to find, we've even talked about, is there something we can create within our business to provide childcare? And we've dismissed that because that's not in our prime mission, but it's certainly a large need.
It is. It is. Yeah. And oftentimes, even when companies want to, businesses want to help their employees, do you have a sufficient number of employees with children of the right age to be able to set up anything? It's a, there's a scaling issue there from some of the companies that I've talked with who would like to be involved. So we'll see what we can do. Mhm.
Is there a way to incentivize companies or businesses with the local government to provide some kind of assistance, like a sharing of, like if a company pays $1,000 towards somebody's childcare for a year, that we would match that or something like that. Some way of getting it from the businesses that are providing local employment to, incentivize them to help their people with the childcare.
My guess would be that there would probably be some rules around using tax dollars to support something like that. But there are things that we can do that aren't directly spending tax dollars, like creating systems or creating networks so that childcare providers can do a shared services agreement where we help them organize and work together and find an accountant that they all use, or a common provider of payroll. So if they have a small childcare center and they've got 5 or 10 employees, that those costs over time can be brought down. When we met with them, one of the things we talked about was their challenges in providing healthcare to employees, small number of employees, it's an extraordinary payroll burden. We can't necessarily provide, we're not a healthcare organization, but we can help advocate to allow childcare providers to provide, to buy into the state system. So facilitating the conversations with Diane Hesselbein, which we didn't do, we were just there, and Alex Jors raised the profile of kind of some of those issues that they're facing. So some of that's kind of network building and network weaving we can do. It doesn't directly reduce the burden, but it helps a little bit. We're probably going to be starting a quarterly childcare roundtable where we meet and have some of the childcare providers just kind of talk with us as business owners. What do they need? And how are they doing? And what is it that we might be able to help with?
How about within a TIF agreement? Is there any way we could put something in there to incentivize companies to do child support or health care? Either one is probably good.
So I am not an expert on whether or not we could do this, but if they fall within a TIF or a TID district and their building needed improvements, I'm wondering if that can't be something that they could apply for. Now, they'd have to go through the same process, I'm guessing, that anyone else would, and that's a pretty heavy process. But, if you needed to replace a roof or you need to install a sprinkler system and they were within the historic district or one of the others, is there a way for that? And I guess we could find out, could ask those questions. I don't know the answers to them. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm looking at Lauren. Lauren, do you know the answer to that? You might.
I do not have an answer to that.
All right.
My 2 months and 1 week of experience.
Well, having connections with Diane Hesselbein and others might help with, because maybe somebody in the state is doing it somewhere, or the state would think, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Maybe they'd partner with communities to do more creative things that way.
One of the more significant suggestions we got when Tom Landgraf came to talk to the Housing Task Force a number of years ago, he was saying, if you do a LIHTC, low-income housing tax credit development building again, if we were to do another one, in his developments through the company that he owns, they try to allocate space for a daycare within that apartment building, because then it reduces the real estate cost. And when you reduce the real estate costs, then it lowers the overall cost of providing services and allows them to pay their daycare providers. You must be familiar with some of, or Tom, do you know Tom?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm not very well. I know of him, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always been my dream for someone to build a condo building, like a multifamily style condo that has a daycare on the first floor.
Yeah.
That you could buy a condo, build some equity, have a daycare, drop your kids off on your way out, back in, but I haven't solved that mystery of how to get that done yet, so. I'm still here.
Well, we start by dreaming, right?
Mhm.
All right, other ideas or suggestions, or do you think this gives us enough to go on and come back to the April meeting with some ideas and maybe a schedule of how we can kind of address these? Jeff, did you have any other suggestions or things that we should be thinking about?
No, I think this is a good start. Again, it goes back to, we've got to have the list and then talk about prioritizing.
Yeah.
because we've been amazingly successful to get the money. We just need to now figure out a way that we're going to appropriately use it.
Excellent. So April, we'll go over our list and prioritize the tasks, but then let's also get the numbers from Renee about what we
Yep.
are anticipating in terms of TID and TIF. And we can have the discussion about how we allocate that money as well. That's the first discussion.
Can we brainstorm about what might be the things so that coming into the April meeting, we've all had a chance to at least see the list and be thinking about, from our perspective, each of our different perspectives, what's the most important one and which ones maybe shouldn't be on the list. A way to do that before April, because it feels like if we just come into April to talk about it again, we're not moving it forward.
I think you're right. I think that's a great idea. 75% of whatever we get will need to be spent on affordable housing. The other 25% is flexible. It's been our tradition so far to use that towards housing affordability, but there may be other types of affordability that we're thinking of if we're looking at other issues within the community that address the ability of people to live here within their means. So do we want to start that brainstorming now? And Jeff, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I I go back to our it's been a long time since the task force work, but I still have the same thing is affordability, giving families that aren't going to be able to afford the large homes that we build, that Waunakee is kind of known for, to be able to get affordable housing into the community through a variety of different ways. So that's the top one. And then I think that the pieces, at least to put on the list or to offer up, is that the redevelopment or the house fix up money and that we've already got going. I think that needs to stay there too, and we need to make that a vibrant program. Just a couple easy things.
They're easier now than they were a few years ago.
Well, that's true. We have some money now.
Yeah, we do. We do. Abby, do you have any ideas?
I wasn't part of the task force, so I think I probably should spend some time in the next couple weeks going back through you guys. I assume you have meeting notes and everything.
Yeah.
So maybe, we can go back through and just kind of review that stuff.
Okay.
Before the next meeting, and then I can be ready.
All right. David?
I don't want to be Mr. Negative, but the housing stock in the community is pretty much dictated by two things: available buyers and the people who are going to build them. And at the rate that this community is growing, the developers aren't probably seeing a lot of need to build the smaller houses. And to change that, you're looking to change a whole working dynamic, which is pretty difficult. And I don't think, we don't have the kind of funds to, go out and fund a development where you put in 30 or 40 houses of these smaller varieties. So I think we're climbing uphill on this issue. Wow. I don't know how you turn that around. I really don't.
I don't know that we're going to turn it around at scale, but we have talked in the past about land trusts or purchasing land and putting out an RFP in which a developer would provide us with, we would control what they could bid on. They would purchase the land and then develop according to that. That is a change in how definitely a change in how we would have done things now. And I would imagine that even though we're expecting what for us is a pretty sizable check, with this next TID closing is still a very small amount of money when it comes to purchasing land. So it might only be a small 4 or 5 townhouses or, something that's small at the start. Our first step might be gathering more information. Todd, do you have any ideas?
So that's kind of what I was thinking, and I was thinking Abby seemed to understand that there's notes and stuff, and I probably need to even understand where to look to find some of the history or how to help navigate
Yeah.
some of this. I was almost thinking we should meet weekly for a while until we get caught up, and so then we could get ahead of the game. But maybe I could just do homework in the meantime. But yeah, if I had a little bit more information about, what a updated plan would look like, or what the feasibility of some of this stuff was, that would help me prioritize in my mind what would be the, what would make more sense. So it feels like we need some more of that stuff, but I'd be very interested too in things like the daycare thing, because it seems like everywhere, I have children that have that need, and it's like that's expensive stuff. So
Yeah, not only is it expensive, but it's to the point where you have to be on a waiting list before you're pregnant
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
be having a spot for when your baby comes. So yeah, it's a challenge for sure.
It is not easy. It is not, it was much easier when I had kids.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's true. I think it's always hard to have kids. I
Yeah.
don't know that it ever gets easier.
Daycare is available though, and it wasn't
True.
crazy expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing then is we probably need a review of the housing task force work. Both in terms of us understanding what we've accomplished, relative to the goals of the task force set out, but then also as an orientation. Both you, Abby and Todd, are relatively new, but we'll also have somebody that we'll probably have identified by mid-April by our next meeting that will transition as Jeff has decided to leave. So we'll have a nice overlap in that month and we can maybe do some review. I can do the review. Jeff, would you like to do the review along with me?
Yes, that would
Your
be fine. Sure.
Or in April if you're in town? Yeah. So we'll do the review together, and kind of set up what we did, what happened and how much we've accomplished since then. We'll have the discussion on possible ways to allocate, the TIF funding. Maybe one of the things that you and I can do, Lauren, between now and, this agenda going out is identify what we would be allowed to spend the money on in terms of housing affordability, and then maybe some ideas for the 25%. We're choosing not to spend that on housing affordability, but other forms of affordability, what that could possibly be spent on, or some kind of great ideas that we are maybe finding out there. So every once in a while, when we did the housing task force, we used to send out homework ahead of time. I hate to assign work to people, but if we did have information that you'd want to review, would you be open to that? So maybe we'll come up with some of the background information.
That would help
Yeah,
me.
okay. Okay,
I'm not afraid of homework, Kristen. Bring it on.
all right, all right. I'm not afraid to assign it, so.
That was the first question my wife had for me. Did you have homework?
Now you can say yes.
There will be no quizzes and no tests though, just homework. So just homework. All right, anything else that we should consider before we move on from this agenda item, or anything else that you are thinking that we should do? Or we should be learning about? If you have any inspiration between now and the next meeting, send a note to Lauren and we'll collect all of that information. I think our goal, when Lauren and I were talking, is that we've reached this point where we've, got some solid accomplishment under our belt, and now we're able to maybe look at kind of what's coming down the road next. We'd like that to be a collaborative process.
What are some good sources maybe for research, or for me to get up to speed on some of these approaches and ways to do this job better? I think if I had maybe some, are there state things or county things, or?
There are a couple of meetings that the Housing Task Force had, one in particular where, and the data from these is a little bit outdated. but the lessons are evergreen. We had a meeting where Kurt Paulson, who is a professor of regional planning. Yeah, he's on the news a lot right now, and he does a lot of the state level reports for housing and then consults with a lot of communities. He presented along with Tom Landgraf, and then I'm drawing a blank on the gentleman that does housing, co-housing and land trusts in Madison. The three of them came along with the Center for Cooperative Development at UW-Madison, and so they talked about the housing crisis, about how affordable housing comes online for light tech projects, co-ops and land trusts all at once. And it was kind of an hour and a half housing 101, entry level housing 101. And that's, I think for housing, that's a great place to start. There are a couple of other resources on childcare, a couple of seminars that Extension has put on that we might have videotape of yet that I'll round up. If I can, but right, maybe this first, I won't give you guys hours and hours. We'll just maybe do a review of that housing.
Yeah, and then there is one report that I can send out. It was part of what CARPC, or the Capital Area Regional Planning Commission, did as part of their 2050 regional development framework. And it's their work on estimating future housing demand just in Dane County generally. But it does give you kind of a background into how that works and what the overall demand is in Dane County.
Yeah, because I feel like the last month I learned a lot from the speakers and stuff that we had
Yeah.
that talked about the school districts and how all the TIFs and TID stuff worked. So
The other thing maybe we should send around is there is a videotape. The school board had a special session last week, maybe the week before. I think it was last week. On they hired a consultant to do enrollment projections and demographic projections for the school district. So it's not just Village of Waunakee, it's the whole area. And I thought that was incredibly informative because it talked not just about who they're expecting to come into the district, but who is in the various neighborhoods in terms of family composition and where and when they're seeing turnover in neighborhoods. That was really interesting. There's some really important takeaways. We have fewer kindergartners than high school seniors, and the implication is that people can't afford to live here when their kids are in kindergarten, but as their kids age up, they increase incomes as they get older too and are moving into the district. So there's some implications for us on that if we're not providing entry-level housing, which is incredibly difficult to do.
Yeah.
We're a market economy. But if we're not providing that for parents of 4K, 5K students, at least we're aware of it, maybe. So.
I would just offer that it may be, this committee spent quite a bit of time doing prioritization of those 14 or 15 items coming out of the task force, whether that isn't an appropriate time for us to send those out and the work that we have done already and see whether that's a list that can help us focus. Now that we have funds, are there things on that list that funding is going to be able to help?
All right, that's a great idea. Yeah, we did spend a couple of sessions doing that back in 2022, 2023.
Yeah. I think getting it out for everybody in advance of the next meeting would be helpful for me.
All right. All right, anything else on this agenda item before we move on to the next one? Thank you for the discussion and for indulging the free-form nature of it. Lauren and I said we really want to have this discussion and we want it to be a collaborative agenda. So I think we've got some great material to start with. So second item then is we had this great presentation last month from Steve Summers on TID and TIF. And are there any questions from that or any lingering kind of, I've been thinking about it over the last month thoughts and I'd like a follow-up on this or a follow-up on that.
I will admit that I'm here without my TIF experts. So any questions that are asked, there is like a 10% chance that I'll be able to answer it confidently and accurately. So there is a possibility that I would, have to write it down and get back to you. But because we're having an amendment to TID 6, which is Kilkenny Farms. The amendment is coming to the CDA on April 10th. We wanted to give this opportunity to ask and answer any lingering questions or concerns before we get to that meeting.
Is this, it seems like a lot of land is already spoken for in the research park area or the industrial park area. Is this gonna continue? Will we be looking at TIDs and TIFs for redoing business areas or anything else? I'm just trying to get a scale for how many of these more will we be dealing with, or is this gonna be it now with number 10?
That's really hard to say. Usually TIDs are brought up on kind of a case by case basis as the need or the request arises.
Who starts those requests then?
That is a good question. Um,
Typically, it's been developers.
Okay,
Yeah, there is a need for, an industrial park or a need for a new neighborhood to go in. And in my experience, and I'm not a TID or TIF expert, I just react as a board member to them. The developer looks at, all of the possible options for, in the case of a neighborhood, financing infrastructure. It's the general rule has seemed to be that if it's infrastructure that is internal and it's only servicing the houses around it, so a street that goes through that's a residential street, that's not something that TIF or TID would be asked for. But for the infrastructure that's adjacent, that might be improving Century Boulevard, and a benefit to the whole community, that is something that they sometimes come to us for assistance with. So I am grossly understating what it's for. There's also instances where we've had developer incentives where something is coming before the board that is, we like to think it's the TIF financing or the TID financing is getting something better, a higher and better use than we would normally be seeing. And that the benefit of building whatever it is that the private developer is advocating for will generate taxes above and beyond what we'd normally expect. So that's a benefit to the community, or it will provide jobs, or there's some sort of service that we've truly needed in the village and we haven't been able to attract. So there are a number of different scenarios when we establish the district, anything within that district, anything that develops within that district is possibly eligible for TIF or TID. So right now, if remember Steve was showing us the industrial park, there's some empty lots there. If you had something that went in there that was eligible for TIF or TID, it met all of the requirements. And then beyond that, the board, we felt was useful and the board felt was useful, then possibly. That was a very bad explanation that I just.
Yeah, but in terms of the number of TIDs, that is also usually developer led, that they say we would like to do this development. There currently isn't a TID district here, and we would like to either amend or overlay or create a new TID district, which is redundant, a new TIF district, or TID, to kind of spur and incentivize development there. And then the developer and the village get together and go through what I am learning is a very long and rigorous process to make these extensions or overlays or new TIF districts. So I can't say definitively that, it stops here, but it's quite an onerous process for people to go through. And so it's usually very motivated developers are the ones who are willing to go through this process. And we are currently out of our allowable 12% of equalized value is what kind of the max is by state law for all TIF districts. We're around the halfway point. And that's not necessarily good or bad. It does mean that we have space available to do more. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we will do more.
Yeah, so my experience so far was mostly in the industrial park
Yeah.
kid and stuff.
Mhm.
So I was thinking, but when you said infrastructure, that could be residential areas that needed the infrastructure, and that's where, okay, that would be where new opportunities might come from or
Mhm.
something.
Yeah.
Okay.
We get an annual report on all of the TIDS and TIF districts, and we could have Todd send you that. So,
Yeah.
because that gives a little bit of information on the background of each one. It gives the history and the status of where they are.
Well,
Would,
yeah, we got kind of that in last month's thing, you know, because
Yeah.
it showed each of the different districts and stuff.
that's correct. Yeah.
That'd be useful to send
Yeah.
out.
Let's see the TID report.
Mhm.
Would you guys want to schedule, I don't know that we could do an in-person meeting, but we could probably schedule a Zoom with Todd Schmidt and he could talk about kind of how TIDs have originated, who's, at least the recent ones, who's come forward with them. It's a little bit different with the district versus the project within the district, but that might be good background information.
Seems like we have a lot to do, but
We
I'm
do.
not sure that would be,
That's
because
just
we
what-
got such a good thing last
Yeah.
month. I'm not sure that's the
Okay.
first thing.
That's just what I was feeling anxiety about also.
Uh-huh.
We've got our kind of task to, I believe, prioritizing how do we think we're going to utilize the funds, and spending more time figuring out how the funds get to us maybe isn't as important right now as trying to say, okay, we've got this pool of money now, how are we going to improve affordable housing in Waunakee? Rather than us spending more time talking about how does the TIF process work. Just one person's opinion.
You said it much better than I did, John.
I agree. Are you feeling all equipped next week or next month to vote on you'll get the information ahead of time, of course. But to take that, we're the first look the village gets for TIF financing at this point. So we're feeling comfortable with that. And if not, if you get the material and you're like, yeah, I'd really like to talk to Todd Schmidt about it or Lauren about it.
Give us a call, send an email.
yeah.
We're here.
Okay.
All right. Cool. All right, and then our third item on the list is the thing I don't want to speak for everybody, thing I find most exciting and most interesting. That's the Housing Betterment Fund update.
Yes. So far, we've gotten lots of calls with questions and clarifications, which actually led us to a process change that I'll get to. We don't have any applications yet, but that was expected. People didn't necessarily want to put the cart before the horse, because we were hoping to get the application started March 1st, but we weren't exactly sure and all the information wasn't out there yet. So right now, what we're hearing from people is that they're using this time to get plans and quotes from contractors and contractor availability, hoping to get those applications in early to mid-April, but definitely by that April 30 deadline for those who can. But I mean, we've had people calling about HVAC systems, roofs, siding. I mean, really just, big maintenance items that need to happen, but are also pretty intensive for homeowners to take on. So we've been giving a lot of answers and clarifications to it. The process change, it wasn't a substantive change to it, so we didn't bring it to the CDA, and we also didn't want, we had discussed bringing it to the CDA, got an opinion from the attorney who said, it's not substantive, you don't need to take it to the CDA, just kind of let them know this is what's happening. But we did get quite a few questions about how do people who don't file taxes because they don't meet that income threshold, how do they apply for this program? Because we were requiring tax forms and pay stubs. So what we did was add a certification document that they can sign for non-payment of taxes, just so we have some kind of record that they have been told by a CPA they do not need to file taxes, they don't meet the income threshold, but that way they can still apply for this program because they're definitely the target audience at that point. And we updated the language from requiring pay stubs to requiring proof of income or proof of monthly income. So that way it can encompass Social Security and other programs that aren't a paycheck. And then, like I mentioned earlier, we met with the Dane County Division of Housing Access and Affordability, and they were really interested when we mentioned this program. And I sent them the information today, and so they're going to take a look through it and get back to us on maybe how their programs can either dovetail or stack on top of this program to really help out homeowners in some of that older housing stock. And then I did want to show you really quickly. You disabled my screen sharing. Okay. Both the website and how to get there. So I showed you a screenshot of it the last time, but this is what it looks like. So it has the application review periods, the application process, all the information. People can look at the housing program policy. Just some basic information on the nuts and bolts of it without getting into the tedious details of it. And then my contact information for any questions. And there are a few ways you can get here. It's the village website, ville.waunakee.wi.us/WHBF. We wanted to make it as easy as possible, so just the initials of the program. Or if you go to Village Services here at the top, there's a direct link here over on the right side to the Waunakee Housing Betterment Fund. So there are a few ways to get to it. And when this went live, Kylie was gracious enough to both, we had collected some emails of people who said, when this opens up, can you please let us know? So those personal emails as well to some local community partners, like the Waunakee Neighborhood Connection and places like that, where people can get information so they can help us get the word out about this program.
Well, and that's really exciting to hear that you got numbers. I have wondered about, okay, we put this out, and I saw it come through. Are we going to get 2 or 3 calls? What kind of volume of is that? And you indicate you've gotten calls.
I would say
inquiries?
between Kylie and me, we're averaging probably 3 to 4 calls a week.
Oh, that's great.
Good. Yeah.
Great.
Wow. Excellent. All right, and we evaluate these in May.
Yep, so the application cutoff is April 30th, and that way it gives us enough time to go through those last minute applications. And we'll bring them forward on May 8th, which is also one of the reasons I would like to discuss what our what the budget is for this at the April meeting. So that way we have a little bit more of an expectation going into the May meeting. But hopefully by then we'll have 1 or 2 applications, and I can give you a number of applications that we've received as opposed to currently none, but lots of phone calls and lots of interest.
Sure. Great.
Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions on this item?
Did you get any sense for the types? Was it more siding or more roofs or more any things? Or I was just curious because they're gonna need help, right? They're gonna need contractors to do that work.
Right.
I was just wondering what types of contractors maybe locally that they could partner with.
Yep. So we've gotten calls so far. I've gotten quite a few calls about roof repair or roof replacement, and a couple about furnace repair or replacement in older
That's
homes.
interesting.
And I think my parents just went through a furnace replacement and air conditioner replacement and found out how expensive that can get. And then we've had some that also include on some older homes, deck repair replacement, or possibly, I think one phone call was about the addition of an accessible ramp that would be ADA compliant.
See, that would be great if
Mhm.
we got noted for that or
Yep.
figured that part of it out.
Yep.
Good
So we're
project.
excited.
Yeah, that's very exciting.
It was interesting, if you go down 2nd Street, there's a house right now that was have been, looked like a perfect candidate for this kind of thing. I mean, all of the old siding is coming off right now.
Mhm.
And, I drove by and went, oh. Obviously, they didn't need our help, but.
Yeah.
I said, there's a perfect example of,
Yeah.
Yep.
improving that stock there. I mean, they really have the whole house being undone on the
In the
outside.
process of doing it right now?
They're doing it
Oh,
right
wow.
now, yeah.
Wow. It's great to see people investing in our kind of core heart neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're expecting probably the busiest round of applications will be the third round of applications. Because people will have a little bit more lead time to talk to their contractors, and that way they're not worried about, is my roof going to fail now or can I wait 2 months? So we expect that to pick up in subsequent cycles, but probably be the busiest around the winter cycle.
Great. Very exciting. I think May is going to be a great meeting.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Any other questions we have on this or other issues? Right. Seeing none, we have one last item on the agenda. Would you like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion that we adjourn, yeah.
I said, there's no number
Do
4.
we have a second? So,
I second the.
all
motion.
right. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Did we lose Jeff already? We did. No? All right. Thank you,